This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi Sai, good morning. The Parsha begins, Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov, V'eretz Mitzrayim, Shiva Esrei Shana. Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years. And interestingly, the Medrash points out that we have another great individual in history that also spent the final 17 years of his life away from the place he lived the rest of his life. And that was Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. The Medrash tells us, Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Tzadi Vav Ois Hey. It says, B'chayav hayadar b'tzipayri shiva esrei shana. During the lifetime of Rebbe, he lived in Tzipori 17 years. V'haya koirei al atzmai, and he would call about himself, Vayechi Yaakov v'eretz Mitzrayim Yud Zayin Shana. He would call, referring to that period of his life of living in Tzipori for 7 years, he would refer to 17 years, thank you. He made reference to the fact that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim for 17 years. V'chaya Yehudah b'Tzipori Yud Zayin Shana. And Yehudah lived in Tzipori 17 years. So this Medrash is making some type of analogy and comparison between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. Somehow there's a similarity between the fact that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim 17 years and Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi lived in Tzipori for 17 years.
Did we ever discuss who's in Gilgal? Was that Rabbi Akiva?
So we did touch on this, and we're going to elaborate on it further. Okay.
Tzipori is Babylon.
What? No, Tzipori is in Eretz Yisrael. It's a high location that has
called Sepphoris in Greek.
Okay. I'll accept that. That's what it is, right? Okay.
Are you in the position to contradict me?
No, I'm not. Okay. So Gemara says, Rav Nachman for Rav Yitzchak have a Yasri b'Sudas. We're going to see, are there any other comparisons between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi? Rav Nachman and Rav Yitzchak were sitting at a meal. Amar le Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchak. So Rav Nachman says to Rav Yitzchak, Le mamar milsa. Say something. No. Epis a shtickle Torah. Tell me something. So Amar le, I'll tell you something. You're not allowed to talk while you're eating. Yeah, you wanted me to talk? You can't talk while you're eating. Amar le, Hachi Amar Rav Yochanan, Masichem Besuda, Shema Yakdim Kana Leveshet. You can't talk during a meal because maybe the windpipe will precede the food pipe. V'yavu de sakana. So Basar decided after he finished eating, Amar le, Rabbi Yitzchak says to Rav Nachman, Amar le Hachi Amar Rav Yochanan, Yaakov Avinu loy meis. Yaakov Avinu never died. So he says he never died. So what did the eulogizers do and the embalmers and the burial society? They put him in the ground for nothing, right? Did they eulogize, embalm and bury him for nothing? Amar le. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, look, Mikrani Dairesh, I darshan it from a pasuk. It says, V'yata al tirav the Yaakov Nemashem Yatechas Yisrael Ki Hani Moshiach Meirachoik V'yazaracha Meiret Shavim Makish Hulazaroi. The Torah compares, the Navi compares Yaakov to his children. Ma'azaro b'chaim, just like Yaakov's descendants are always alive, Afhu b'chaim, so too Yaakov Avinu is always alive. So the Gemara seems to say Yaakov Avinu loy meis, whatever that means, which is a topic in and of itself. But in some dimension, Yaakov Avinu lives on. And interestingly, we find that feature by Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. The Gemara Masechta Ksubos tells us every Friday night Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi came to his house to make Kiddush. So he says, Shkoyach, what else is he going to do Friday night? This is after he was dead. The Gemara says Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi would come after he died every Friday night to make Kiddush. Look in the Gemara, it says, when Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi died, the Gemara in Ksubas Daf Kuf Gimel, Nera Yehei Dalek B'Mekaimai, a candle will be lit by his place, Shulchan Yehei Arach B'Mekaimai, a table should be set by his place, Mita Teid Mutzas M'Kaimai. The Gemara says, my taima, what are you setting, why are you putting a placemat by Rebbe's seat? He's not, he's in the ground. Says the Gemara, Kabei Shimsha Hava Asi Labeisei. He would come home every Friday night. So one Friday night, the neighbor was knocking on the door. Kara Abba Amra Amse, the maidservant of Rebbe said, Shasiku, the Rebbe Yosef. The maidservant said, quiet, you're bothering Rebbe. So the neighbor said, huh? I'm bothering Rebbe? Rebbe's dead. Kivin the Shama, once the word got out that Rebbe would come back to his house Friday night, right? Kivin the Shama, Shuv Layas, he didn't want to come anymore. Shaloi Lahoitzi Laz al Tzadikim Harishainim. He didn't want to be Motzi Laz on the early Tzadikim. In other words, that only he should come back to life to make Kiddush, and the early Tzadikim should not. Rav Pam pointed out from here, it's not on the sheets, a beautiful insight. We say about Shabbos is Me'ein Olam Haba. That Shabbos is like a taste of Olam Haba. But from this Gemara, you know what you see? Olam Haba is a taste of Shabbos. That Shabbos is even greater than Olam Haba.
Do we say
because here,
60th of
yes, the Gemara does say that in Brachos on Daf Nun Zayin, I believe. But nevertheless, in a way, Shabbos is greater than Olam Haba. Otherwise, what's Rebbe coming and leaving Olam Haba to come back to Shabbos? The concept of Yafeh Shah Achas Maisim Tovim Olam Hazeh. If you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, even Olam Haba is not greater than that. Okay. So Rabbi Kiva Eger brings down in the Goyen Hashas a very obvious question on this Gemara, and that is, very nice. Rabbi came back and made Kiddush, but how is he moitzi his family? Because we know that Mesim
didn't say he was the most his family. Just said he made Kiddush.
There's a story that...
Well, and his wife, who made Kiddush?
Right, I don't know if his wife was alive. He was just talking about after he died.
What about his children? They made their own Kiddush?
Yes, of course.
So Rabbi Kiva Eger is bothered by this kasha, because the Gemara says he made Kiddush, doesn't say, and afterwards the children made Kiddush. Sounds like they were mechabed him to make the Kiddush.
Doesn't say who motzi es mishpachta.
It's nice when he was making Kiddush very
Let's move on.
So now the Goyen Hashas brings down, look at number 4, V'hayanira b'bigdei chamudais. Not only would Rebbe come, what was he wearing? What did Rebbe wear when he came home? Did he the tachrichin?
He wore his strimal.
On his tux.
No, he wore his strimal.
He wore his bigdei chamudais.
His Bekishem.
Shahaya loivesh b'Shabbos. Upaiter es harabim. He exempted the rabbim their obligation b'kiddush hayom. We know la mesim chavshim. Mesim are pater from mitzvahs. V'loi kishar mesim shem chavshim mitzvahs. Not like other mesim that are exempt from mitzvahs. Ki tzadikim chayim. Tzadikim live on. Upeturim b'kiddush. Upaitrim b'kiddush. Not only was Rebbe chay, he was able to be mitzi his family in the kiddush. And you have over here on your sheets that about the concept of Mesim coming back to this world. Look at number 5. This is from the Sefer Chasidim. V'im chafetzim hamesim l'hisrais. If a dead person wants to come back to this world, he could come back. Az nitin rishus l'sos, he could appear. Even though a dead person could come back and appear wearing his clothing, in any clothing that they want. Sometimes in a garment that he was buried with, and sometimes in a malbush before. Rabbeinu HaKadosh and Rebbe Hayanira bebegadim chamudais. Rebbe would appear in his beautiful clothing shayloivish b'Shabbos that he wore on Shabbos, but not in his shrouds. Lahodia shadayin hu betokvo, to show he's in full force. Not only did he make Kiddush, he pattered the other people. It's not like other dead people that are exempt. He was like he was alive. So what do we see over here? That not only did Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi say, I lived in Sipori 17 years like Yaakov Avinu lived in Mitzrayim 17 years, but they also share this common feature, that Yaakov Avinu lo meis and Rebbe lo meis.
Why does it say that Yaakov Avinu comes back and makes Kiddush? What is the special milo of Rabbi Yehudah that he should be Zocha? Because I don't know if Zocha is the right word, but that he should come back and make Kiddush. So he was on a madrega higher than Yaakov Avinu or Abraham or Yitzchak or whatever.
I don't know. But what's the explanation? So this is something we mentioned. The next 3 Mar Makomos we mentioned when we had our Shiur on Parshas Toldos about Antoninos being affected by the milk of Rebbe's mother, and Rebbe being affected by the milk of Antoninos' mother. And we quoted the following 3 Mar Makomos: V'lachei nikra Rebbe Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Why is Rebbe why is it called Rabbeinu HaKadosh? Why Kadosh? We'll see. Because look in the next line, V'Rebbe hu Gilgal shel Yaakov. Rebbe was the Gilgal of Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov Avinu was Masake in which bracha of Shemona Esrei? The first one is Abraham, Gevuras is Yitzchak. The third one is Ata Kadosh. And because Rebbe was the Gilgal of Yaakov, he is called Rabbeinu HaKadosh. L'chein nikra gamkin Rabbeinu, Rebbe Rabbeinu HaKadosh hu Gilgal shel Yaakov. And we learned further that which midah was the midah of Yaakov Avinu? Abraham was Chesed, Yitzchak was Gevura, Yaakov is Tiferes. What does Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi say in Pirkei Avos? Look at number 7. Rabbi Omer, Eizo hidach yeshara sheyavar lo Adam. What's the correct path in life? Kol shehi Tiferes oseh v'Tiferes omen Adam. Rabbi stressed the midah of Tiferes. He was the Gilgal of Yaakov Avinu. And finally, number 9, here's the Maramakim we didn't have. We did speak it out though. And this is the Megala Amukas at the beginning of Parshas Vayechi. And that is, the Megala Amukas says, that what is Rabbi Yehudah called? Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. Nasi is Rashi Tevos. Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu. A spark of Yaakov Avinu. Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. Nitzutz Shel Yaakov Avinu. And yesterday I saw a very interesting thing. This is also a Maramakam we mentioned when we were learning Parshas Bahaloscha, and that is, it's pointed out in the Sefer Beis HaOtzar from Rabbi Yosef Engel. We mentioned him on Wednesday, right? Rabbi Yosef Engel. We mentioned him.
What did you say was the Gadol Ador at the time that he lived?
What did we mention from Rabbi Yosef Engel? We mentioned him last week from the Asvan Dairaisa and the Gilyonei Hashas. So Rabbi Yosef Engel says like this. He points out.
Where was he?
About 100 years ago.
Time the Chassam Sofer?
No, later. Rabbi Yosef Engel, I believe, was about the very beginning of the 1900s. Rabbi Yosef Engel says like this. He was a tremendous Baki. He was a Baki Nifla. And he points out that throughout Mishnayos, whenever we bring down the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, often it says, Rabbi Omer, Omer Ani. Remember? We discussed this once. Rabbi Omer, Omer Ani. And we even had it in Masechet Megan. He quotes all the places. Kedushin, Daftes, and Gittin, Lamed Ches, and Lamed Tes, and Nun Beis, and Erech and Yud Zayin, and Erech and Chav Dalet, and Tainis Daf Beis. All right, and he lists about a dozen places where, when we bring down the opinion of Rabbi, it's Rabbi Omer, Omer Ani. And he wants to know, why is that? Why is that? Why is it that of all the Tanaim, Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi should be the only Tana? But we don't say Rabbi Kiva Omer, Omer Ani, Rav Tarfon Omer, Omer Ani. What does it even mean, Omer Ani? Or who else is talking? So if you remember at the time, the answer of the Beis HaOtzar was that Omer Ani either is like the predecessor of Nira Lefi Ani Es Daiti. You know, if you ever learn a Rabbi Kiva Eger or Pnei Yeshua, when they give a teretz, they say, it seems according to my humble opinion. So we know Rebbe was very humble. The Gemara says in Sota, Mishameis Rebbe Badla Anava. So he didn't want to say, this is the halacha. He's like, Imrani, this is my humble opinion. Or we also learned that the Gemara, this is the answer Beis HaOtzar gave more al pi Kabbalah, that Ani is really the name of Hashem. Like we say in Hoshanas, Taisus points us out, Ani v'hai Hashiana. Ani v'hai Hashiana? Ani is going to help me? Ani is going to help me? Who's Ani? Taisus says Ani is the name of Hashem. That's why Hillel, when he came to Simchas Beis Shaleva, he would say, Im Ani kan hakol kan. If I'm here, everyone's here. Hillel? That's what he was such a Baal Gaiva. He meant if Hashem is here, everyone is here. And we exactly. And we said we added to that, right? Meaning if I'm not for me, and if Hashem's not for me, what do I got? So I saw in the Sefer Likutei Mamorim Shvilei Pinchas Tafshin Ayin Aleph. He wants to answer this question of the Beis HaOtzer a little differently. He has a very good chap. You know what Rebbe means? Oimer Ani, Oimer Nitzutz Yaakov Avinu. Ani could also stand for Nitzutz Yaakov Avinu, a spark of Yaakov Avinu.
What's Vahai? Ani Vahai.
It's also Shem Hashem. Also Shem Hashem. Okay? So that's what he writes. Ani could stand for Nitzutz Yaakov Avinu. So let's take a look, if we try to get a little understanding, what exactly is this comparison between Yaakov Avinu and Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi. So the Ar Gedalyahu, Rabbi Gedalyahu Shor, brings down in the Sefer, number 12, the Medrash. He quotes the Medrash we read to start with. Rabbeinu HaKadosh b'chayv ha'yadar b'tzipori yedzayin shana v'hayakari al atzmai v'haychi Yaakov v'eretz Mitzrayim yedzayin shana v'chaya Yehudah b'tzipori yedzayin shin v'tzarech b'yer. Ma rotza Rabbeinu HaKadosh l'hagav is that. What's Rebbe trying to tell us? Yaakov lived in Egypt 17 years. I lived in Tzipori 17 years.
Where's Tzipori?
Tzipori, I think, is in the north.
So it's part of Eretz Yisrael.
Yes.
So when Yaakov says, I lived in Mitzrayim, it's Chutzlar, it's Vashtayach.
Yeah.
So, but he still lived in Eretz Yisrael. So it's not the implication that he was outside the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael.
I hear. Just off the bat, if you look in Sefer Yehoshua, if you look at one of the cities that are mentioned, it mentions the city of Goshen. So the only thing is Goshen is not in Eretz Yisrael. So the Radak says that, I believe, that Goshen was uprooted and moved to Eretz Yisrael. The same way we say Asidin Bate Knesses Bate Midrashes. And in that sense, Yaakov, where he lived, he had Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. Okay. But in any event, what exactly is the comparison between Sipor, Yaakov living in Mitzrayim, and Yehudah HaNasi living in Sipor? We find another comparison. Yaakov. Like we pointed out, the Gemara in Ksubah says how Rebbe would come back every Friday night to make Kiddush. Right? And like this. The concept over here is Kikvar Biyarnu, we've already explained. She'elu hayadzayin shanim shayachai Yaakov l'Mitzrayim. These 17 years that Yaakov lived in Mitzrayim were no ordinary 17 years. We're no ordinary 17 years. Hayatzarech b'zeh, he says like this. Hayachios me'ein olam haba. Yaakov's final 17 years in Mitzrayim, they were like the world to come. Kelashon hamedrash. Like the Medrash says, the last 17 years of his life, all the difficulties of life were removed from Yaakov Avinu. And now why was this? Before Klal Yisrael went into the Galus of Mitzrayim, it was necessary that Yaakov live a 17 years of respite, and he was able to inject into Klal Yisrael a certain spirituality. That gave Klal Yisrael the ability to last in the Galus. In other words, Yaakov Avinu, for the last 17 years of life, he didn't have the tzara of Esav and Lavan and Dinah and Yosef. He lived at peace, so to speak. He was able to focus on injecting the Kedusha into Klal Yisrael for them to be able to last through the Shibud of Mitzrayim. These 17 years paved the way and prepared for Klal Yisrael to stay in the Galus afterwards. So too, that is exactly what Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi did. Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi lived in a time where there was great peace in Eretz Yisrael. He was able to gather, right, especially under the auspices of Antoninos, he was able to redact and codify the Mishnayos, and that gave us the chiyus to last through the Galus, through the Torah Shabbat Peh. So Yaakov Avinu, in a certain sense, was bebechinas. He was on the level of Torah Shabbat, and he was able to pave the way for our existence in Galus and Mitzrayim. Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi was on the bechina of Torah Shabbat Peh, and through that he was able to inject kedusha into Klal Yisrael to last through the Golus. Through that, Golus ha'amuka v'arucha shechoshech yichas ha'aretz sasam b'toch Klal Yisrael ar gadol. Yaakov Avinu was able to inject within us this great light. V'zehu ha'ar shel shisa sidrim Mishnah shesidrim Rebbe. This was the great light that Rebbe illuminated to Klal Yisrael of the 6 orders of the Mishnah. He says Yaakov was mitzad Torah shebachsav, and Rebbe was mitzad Torah shebal peh. Sherebi be'elu hayudzayin shanim b'tzipori. The 17 years that Rebbe spent in Tzipori, asa masha asa Yaakov be'elu hayudzayin shanim b'Mitzrayim, were analogous in their achievement to what Yaakov accomplished in Mitzrayim. Shehichnis ha'ar ha'gadol hazeh b'sach Klal Yisrael. He was able to inject this great light into Klal Yisrael. Shebetoch hashisha sidrei Mishnah, that within the 6 orders of the Mishnah, Gana zeh ha'ar ha'shal yada b'chaltein l'hachzik ma'am b'gas hazeh. Right, we know, we learned Chanukah time that the Ar HaGanos is hid in the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. So the same way, so to speak, Yaakov, through his peace, he was able to inject the Kedusha into Klal Yisrael to last through the Golus. That is what Rebbe accomplished. And then he brings down, look in the next paragraph, B'Sefer Chasidim Maksha al Had Rebbe Hoitzis Mei Beisa B'Kiddush. How could Rebbe be motzi his family in Kiddush? HaKaim Alon de Mesim B'Tormin at mitzvos. We hold Mesim are exempt from mitzvos, like it says La Mesim Chavshi. And he answers, by tzaddikim who are called alive, they are not exempt from mitzvos. What does the Sefer Chasidim mean? The Omer Kavanasahu, the depth of his intent is, Ki Eitzel Tzadikim, when it comes to the righteous, Sha'af B'chayim Chiyusa Mahapchem Es HaChomer L'tzura, that even while they're alive, they transform their body into its ultimate form. Ve'enam Nenemi Olam Hazeh Klal, and they get no benefit from this world. Az Yesh Lahem Zeh HaLavush Gam La'olam Haba. In that case, they could wear the same type of cloak even in the world to come. And Rebbe said about himself, he had no hana from this world, even like a finger's breadth. He was able to wear his spiritual clothing even in the world to come. Because for a regular person, what's Misa? Misa is the cessation of physical pleasure. So that's why it creates this completely different station. Once a person's body ceases gaining pleasure, so he now enters a new existence. But for Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi, who never had hana while he was alive, his misa didn't transform him to a new state, a new existence. Okay. So let's just conclude with the following. We find that there's a medrash that says Ein hagalios miskansos ela b'schos hamishnayos. Right? It says, if you ever look on the Mishnah Yomas calendar, that's one of their primary Mamari Chazal, that the exiles will only be gathered in the schus of the Mishnah. And in this sense, the Sefer Imrei Baruch, Rabbi Baruch Simon, wants to point out that in the same way Yaakov Avinu, through his 17 years in Mitzrayim, was able to pave the way for the upcoming Galus and then Geula, so too that is what Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi accomplished. And then he explains, take a look in the 3rd paragraph, Ki gvar be'arnu, she'elu hayudzayin shanim Yaakov Avinu chai b'mitzrayim hayachkiyos me'elam haba. Okay, this is a quote from the Ar Gedalyahu. And how he says that Yaakov Avinu living in Mitzrayim these 17 years, the peace that he had allowed him to inject the Kedusha into Klal Yisrael, which is exactly what Rabbi Yehudah HaNasi accomplished. And he concludes, look in the last paragraph, we learn from here, Shal Yidei Limud HaMishnayos, that through the Limud HaMishnah, Shechiba Rebbe, Yiskala HaKetz, the Ketz will be revealed, V'tavai HaGeula. Why is that? Because we know, Rabbi Isai, that the word Mishnah could be read Neshama. Because the Mishnah is Osios Neshama. And through our Neshamos, we're all connected, right? We're all, in this world, we seem like we're separate entities, but Tachas Kisei HaKavod, we're all one mass Neshama. So it's the Koach of the Mishnah of Rebbe, through which we're all united, through our Neshamos, that will ultimately bring the Gula Shlema, and we'll hold it over here. Wish you all a wonderful Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.